Hello, welcome back to Autistic Radio. Here every Sunday. It's it's been a rough old week for myself. I've not been very well, which means that we're a bit behind with some of the podcasts that we've edited up, and a lot of material, a lot of different recordings that we're really proud of, but we haven't got them out there yet. But I do enjoy doing it, so I will crunch them out over the next few days as I gradually get better from this virus. We've had a few more voices joining us here at Autistic Radio, and that's always a pleasure. So if you're one of the people that have been sitting listening to us, thinking, I might chip in, I might text in, then remember that we have the 444 every Sunday, 4:44 p.m., which equates to maybe 12:44 Eastern Standard Time in the United States. So the middle of Sunday. It's a conversation where we can just chat. Sometimes people bring a question about autism with them, something from their own life, their own experience, and we do tend to talk about autism. So it's also a way of picking up what other people might be thinking and listening and keeping your own mental health tuned in, with having other people expressing what they're feeling and you having some identity with that. That's a very calming and healing and helping thing to have. And so do think about joining the 444 as a podcast, listening to those random thoughts that people put out there and using that podcast as a way of building community with us, the familiar voices that are building here on Autistic Radio for you. Other than to say that we're going to catch up, let's check to see what Harry's got ready for us.
Thanks,
Can
Jules.
I pass it over to you, Harry? Yeah.
Sorry, I jumped in there. Thanks, Jules. Good evening, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for the 2nd of March 2025. And this is where we discuss the Facebook posts that have been shared on the Autistic Radio Facebook page. And we'll just start on with the first post, the most recent one, which is from Joy of Autism, a personal blog. This page is dedicated to my son Jacob and for all autistics and their families and friends. My goal is to inform, advocate, educate, and share smiles. And what they've shared is their own quote. If you don't think you know anyone who is autistic, guess again. What's people's thoughts on that?
I think that's quite a good wee slogan, because, or like quite a catchy wee thing. It's quite effective because I think it really, it could really like open into like conversations about stereotypes that people have and how, I think autism would surprise quite a lot of people.
Yeah, and sometimes it's even your own family without you knowing it.
A lot of people only think of stereotypes in the media.
That is true regarding stereotypes and things that people would say obvious. I mean, it's only in the last couple of years that I've even been told, not even been told, but that I've found out through conversation and things that there's people in my own family, like cousins and distant cousins, different ages, they're autistic. And it's quite funny because it's like when I get told like someone's maybe just been identified or diagnosed with autism quite late, maybe in their 50s, And there's someone else who was diagnosed as a child who's actually getting into early adulthood. It's like when they're talking about, like my dad was talking about it to me, regarding family members. It's just like, he talks to me like I'm this autism expert, which is quite cute in a way. And basically, because sometimes what happens is other people, like parents, carers, or friends, who know someone who's autistic, like to ask people who may have autistic relatives or autistic children, just to talk about experiences and things like that. And there's, questions that was asked is like, I'm giving an example how certain people behave and why they would do that, and then I'm giving my opinion. And of course, I always say everybody with autism is different, but there's always a sort of similarity that they talk about, that you feel that sort of connection. Even though I don't know the people, directly, go, oh, right, yeah, I get that. Like struggling in school or communication difficulties or doing things that other people think is strange but isn't strange, like wanting to be alone, not really want to be in contact in terms of being very sociable. It's just prefer being themselves and doing their own thing, which, as we know in general society, is looked upon as a big negative. If you do that, there's something wrong with you. So, yeah, this sort of quote just shows you that you will know or not be aware, but you will know someone that fits that description in terms of autism. It's just you don't know that they're autistic because you've not been told or you're just not aware. And I find that more and more so now that it's a lot more common. I mean, like speaking to people I used to go to school with, and then you hear them talk about their own children, and so autism, autistic son, autistic daughter, or they talk about even autistic uncle, autistic, parent, or even just autistic friends, and it's something that's a quote that's sort of, it's quite inspirational in a way, that break down the stereotypes. The media does not help. I mean, I don't know how prevalent Rain Man stereotype is now, but there has been other stereotypes well after that. I mean, I watched a programme, Touch of Frost, which is, in fairness, over 20 years old, and the person who was autistic, the character who was autistic in the show, was shown that as very stereotypical autistic sort of characterisation. Not silly, not stupid, but not capable of living without their parents and acting in certain ways that was looked upon as strange and could be misidentified as being sinister. So, yeah, that's my take on it. The next post is from Phenomenally Autistic Arts and Entertainment page, Autism Advocate. And what they're sharing as part of Read Across America Day is someone who has illustrated 34 books to date. No biggie. Today I'm sharing my book I'm most proud of. I'm autistic, I'm phenomenal. I'm autistic and I'm phenomenal is a story that displays the challenges, but more importantly, the joys of autism through the eyes of a little autistic black girl. Experience her journey as she navigates both difficulties and the beauty of her unique perspective, shedding light on the power of acceptance and embracing differences. Available now on Amazon. Little black autistic girls need representation too. And it provides the appropriate links to access this book. What's your thoughts on this one?
It's making me
That's cool.
smile a wee bit.
Jules?
No, I think I agree with what Raymond said. It makes you smile. I think it's cool. And I suppose if I was to go on longer, I was to be reminded of a conversation that I've got recorded coming up with Karen Tim, the educationalist, talking about having books that represented an autistic person in the children's classrooms, and her need and her want to actually publish something herself that made it closer to some of her own experience. And then this is a black person that's created something that's more applicable to her experience. And the more people from different experiences of autism write something for the children, the better supported they will feel. And that's great. But there's a sadness here, because it's exactly this kind of book that's being ripped out of reading lists and told that you can't have in schools and libraries all over America at the moment. It's the kind of book that's being banned by our new educationalists. So yeah, there's a twinge that doesn't feel okay about that.
When describing the post, I wasn't really doing it justice. Well, I gave it, obviously I was reading out the information, but just to emphasise the colour of the picture of the author of the book. You know, nice and pink, and the book itself is nice and pinky colours, nice and colourful yellow, blue, brown and black, all mixed in a really good. It's like a colourful book. It kind of catches the eye. Of course, you know, I just like those colours, that it's got inspiration. I know sometimes these sort of colours can be a trap, and the thing may not be as inspirational as you may think, but you know, I've got trust in this one at the moment from what I'm reading. I just like how it captures you. You're going, this is going to be good. This is something that's going to reach out to a lot of people, you know, in a good, positive way. And it looks like it's been a lot of fun as well to do. And that's what's important, you know, it can be really draining, positive and progressive, but quite draining to put a representative view, a unique story, even though talk about yourself. You know, your own personal story can be quite, well, not it can be, it will be quite intense in many ways. So it's good to see that sort of kind of nice and bright colour, and it just attracts so many people to have a look at least.
Yeah, I see what you're saying about that, because it's putting this medical word, this autism, this experience, this so-called difficult, this so-called disability thing, but it's putting it in a completely different context by making it all the child colours, all the variety, and putting it squarely into the educational child context. I think that's what I'm getting from that. And that feels safe. It feels like it's a safe thing to have there and read. So yeah, I get that, what you're saying about the way they've packaged that up with the colouring.
Yeah, anything that says it's okay being you is great. I understand that we're always a little bit, not cynical, but suspicious sometimes that we're being played sometimes with imagery and ideas. And so we'll always have reservations, but sometimes you just have to accept positivity on the chin. And it's often something I've associated with America, is that they have this fondness for the positive thought, and you know, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's that power of positivity chime, isn't it?
Yeah, we can do it.
The next post is from Autistic Not Weird. Community page. Articles and insight about autism from Chris Bonello, an autistic author, advocate, speaker, and former teacher. All articles copyright Chris Bonello 2015 to 2025. And what he says is, one of the greatest things about autistic people speaking out about what the autistic experience is that more and more dehumanizing stereotypes are being extinguished as a result. Like the above example, which says autistic people don't feel emotion. An autistic response, particularly from Chris Bonello, is autistic me who feels it so much it's painful. What's people's thoughts on that? We don't feel emotion? Who said that?
Isn't it the confusion there sometimes? I was trying to work this one out for myself. Confusion seems to be that people thought autistic people had difficulty expressing emotion. I mean, it's physically impossible, to not feel emotion, I guess. But to express it is another thing. Maybe that's where the roots of that is.
I can't remember the name for it, but there's something about a lot of autistic people where we feel a bit disassociated from our emotions. So we have an emotion, but we can't exactly describe what it is. Somebody's put in the text, alexithymia. That sounds about right to me. And that is often, I think, the source of confusion for this. Not being able to describe your emotion in a way that makes sense to another person. If you think about it, isn't that uncommon? An awful lot of human interaction is about trying to explain your emotions to another human being in a way that they can understand it. And if you've got a group of people that communicate differently, so when they're trying to explain their emotions, they don't use the same methods and terminology, etc., to pass it over. You get this misunderstanding that one group of people isn't feeling the same emotions, and when they express that they can't describe their emotions in the same terms by saying things like, I don't know what this emotion is, I don't know what it means to you, things like this, then that really feeds into this. So it is a trope that tends to be added on to us as a kind of slur. It's one of those traits that is hooked on us as a slur, like the no empathy one, or there's various different ones that get attached to us as other. It's a way of putting us down, disassociating us, making us other.
Yeah, as Robbie's saying, not being able to express your emotion in a neurotypical way. And if you don't do it that way, you're not doing it at all in many people's eyes. I mean, my own experience, channeling emotions, whether it's happiness, sadness, anger, I find it really difficult, and I still do. And as I said before, when I've shown happiness, it's quite loud, and people are taken aback by that. It's like, what's going on here? Because I'm loud. Although I think a lot of people are loud and they're happy, but that's not the point. The point is sometimes I feel hard to channel some emotions, especially difficult ones, and through difficult times or something. Sometimes what I tend to do is just go to sleep so it all calms down. Because even trying to do something, to try and take my mind off something, especially negative, is like I can't even do activity. It's just like it's like the energy's sapped out of me and I need to rest, and then hope that I sort of reset, or at least the rest that I take would help me later on that day, you know, after a couple of hours sleep, which isn't great in terms of sleep pattern way, but then I've done that for years. But I think because of many people find it hard to channel emotions in a way that's so-called expected, normal way, it's like it's misunderstood and misdiagnosed, basically.
People frequently mistake me being anxious for being angry.
Yeah, I've had that. Because when I'm anxious, I shout. And it seems like I'm angry at people around me. But basically what it is, it's kind of angry at myself at not being able to deal with the current situation. But and then people say, "Oh, calm down." Well, that sort of thing. Has anybody actually calmed down when someone told you to calm down? If you're in such a emotional state, so yeah, I can identify with that in a way.
I think that might be why they banned corporal punishment kids, because you cannot force people to be how you want them to be or behave.
Well, thankfully, the time I got to school, which was the mid-80s, the sort of kind of physical punishment, corporal punishment they call it, was no longer, you know, done. The practice wasn't done at that time. I'm talking 1986 here, so it just shows you how far back it may have stopped. Maybe it only stopped a year or two before. I don't know. I never looked it up, but it would just imagine if that was the case. If I was at school, that'd been a nightmare, and it would have obviously it has affected a lot of people that did go through that sort of thing. You know, getting punished for being you. You're not misbehaving. You're just being who you are, and just the misunderstanding of that and getting punished for it must have affected a lot of lives.
But there used to be a common phrase, was it spare the rod and spoil the child, you know? It was seen as a dumb thing to hit children. It was terrible.
One example given is tied to a chair. I can believe that. I mean, when some people talk about that sort of punishment that was delivered in the past, it was like a lot of teachers, a lot of people that were involved in it seemed to have an enjoyment of serving that punishment to people, like a sort of power thrill. And that's being kind. And the way that some people would be made examples of, I mean, it wouldn't just be corporate physical punishment, it'd be humiliation. And, you know, it's just thinking about that right now, I'm actually getting quite angry about how that must have happened to so many people. I mean, when the punishment that came to me when I was in school was basically lines in terms of punishment exercise, like you need to write down about 20 times I will not speak in class, or I will not be late again, or I must do my homework on time, that sort of thing. And then as it went into high school, it was more like detention, where you basically lost half your lunch break and you sat in a room and done extra work. It was a strange one. But the humiliation thing, I mean, some teachers did that anyway because they couldn't touch you, so they used to sort of, I can't remember an example, but there must have been a time because of the way I acted that, and if it was just dropped in the class, there must have been some teachers that must have taken advantage of that and, you know, really made it embarrassing for me. Especially in high school, because high school was an embarrassing time in terms of, you know, going through changes and stuff like that wasn't fully understood in terms of, you know, the body and all that, and how immature, you know, fellow pupils can be. So, yeah, I'm kind of rambling a bit here. It's just all these memories coming in. That's I can believe that one. I'm not saying it's not believable. It's just like an example: being humiliated in front of the class for not calling a teacher sir. It's just showing how normal society has been conditioned. Well, you see it all over. There is a sort of conditioning of society, and if you act a different way, even just, you're looked upon as an anarchist.
Not wrong with anarchists, mate.
The next post is from Our Autism Diary, who's a blogger. I'm Karen, autistic and ADHD, late diagnosed, mum to Ellis, autistic. And what they've shared is a quote from Chris Packham, the wildlife sort of environmentalist that recently, in the last couple of years, revealed that he was autistic. And part of that revelation, or even just discussion of his own experiences, is what he says is, I don't suffer from autism. I suffer from the ignorance of others. What's people's thoughts on that?
Initially, I'm wondering what context he said this. I don't know if you open it up, does it explain that? But recently, we had a wee link that we never got to discuss, which was you'd put one up of a newspaper article, I think, The Independent, interviewing Chris Packham, a wee biography thing. And I read it all avidly, and he's quite an intense and driven individual, you know. It kind of made me feel a bit odd at times, reading about, you know, how driven he is, and the roots of all that. But yeah, I know what he's saying with this statement, but I'm just wondering when you mentioned that, I mean, does he still suffer from the ignorance of others? Because you always think somebody who's kind of made it, if you pardon that phrase, who's maybe a successful, well-known person who might have financial freedom, would be able to counter all that, but that's no guarantee anything, is it?
Wow, you're looking at the extremely rationally there, Raymond, and rather literally. I'm seeing this much more as an internet concocted meme. It may be a quote from him in one of his books, but I think the whole point is to make a pithy comment about, I don't have a problem being autistic. What I have a problem with is the ignorance of autism that causes problems for me. And he's using that to say about us, all of us, using his position, his platform in some kind of way to make a comment on our behalf. So if it was being said on your own behalf, how would it feel, I guess, is where we should be looking at this from.
Yeah, I was kind of using the meme as a platform to launch off on a reference to Chris Packham, so excuse me about that. Memes, very often they're false as well. Some of these things are not even attributable to the person who they state made them sometimes.
Okay, I've missed it, haven't I? It means, from what you just said, it means I missed something about what you were saying about the Chris Packham thing. So help me out by joining in with the bit I've missed. You went off on to the bit. What is it about Chris Packham? Is he a positive person, a negative person? What's the deal?
It's just he's seen as a representative, I suppose, isn't he? A celebrity figure. And as I mentioned, he was in a previous post that was lined up to be discussed in one of these sessions, but didn't get discussed. But I read it, and it had an effect on me, reading about his life and his thoughts and opinions. So, but if no one wants to go there, then that's fine, and we can just deal with the meme.
No, I'm happy to go there. I like one of the books I first read after realizing my own neurodivergence was one written by Chris Pack about his childhood. And I'm trying to remember it. Something called The Sparkle Jar or something like that. Are you familiar with that book? It's about his childhood growing up and the experience of being autistic growing up, and his affinity with the world around him and training his own bird. So yeah, I agree with you. There is somewhere to go with Chris Packham. He is an interesting character, and he is a very interesting representation of an autism that manages to transcend in some ways some of the difficult things of being autistic. As you say, with money, with celebrity, with being able to make art that people pay a lot of money for. So yeah, it's an interesting thing because it sometimes shows how autism, if it's freed from other dimensions, it can flow quite well.
Yeah, didn't he train as a photographer initially, and then that introduced him to like television studios to a certain extent, and then they offer us a presentation role in a program, perhaps. So the networking and the contacts you can see arising out of him being open and able to access his passion, his initial driven passion. Because I sometimes look at a lifetime of not accessing that passion because of confusion and misalignment, and thinking, how did these people figure that out so young?
Well, the other thing about him is he was born in 1961, which means he's 64 this year that's just gone.
Yeah, he's a punk.
Yeah, he's a punk era, and he revealed himself as autistic when he was 44 years old. So he's an adult recognition person.
From my experience of Chris Packham is, from the documentary I did for the BBC, it's, very passionate about being positive and inclusive and progressive and standing ground. And, there was spoke to, I think it was about 4 different people, and try to kind of break down the stereotypes and break down the negative sort of representation that autism had in the past. And that's the sort of way the meme says is, I don't suffer from autism, it's who I am. It's like other people's ignorance that causes issues, that causes the problems, the society's issues, or just other people in general. I've not kind of read any of his books or anything like that, but from from the limited kind of stuff that I've seen him in and read about and listened to regards to autism, it's very positive and very inclusive and very inspirational, because there's so many people that have felt that they've been held back either by other people's ignorance or maybe by their own lack of confidence or just unsure, where do I go from here sort of thing, especially if you're going through the medical sort of system, where autism is kind of put across as this condition. You're limited to what you can do. It's a lifelong, incurable condition, and it's all this negative stuff. You'll have this for life. You need help, and it's just to show how wide autism can be and how positive or being that identity can be, rather than putting it down as an illness, as being diagnosed and all that time before. And it's still pretty recent, all this kind of stuff. So I'm always kind of keen on whatever he's talking about or explaining about autism. I'm always kind of keen to hear more what he has to say. I didn't realise he did a lot. I didn't realise he had books relating to his own autism. I thought a lot of it was basically on the specialist stuff he does, like wildlife and environmental things. So it's good to know that stuff's out there.
Yeah, I really recommend Fingers in the Sparkle Jar by Chris Packham. It has some really well-written lyrical passages in it. There's another book that has a similar set of themes that runs through it, and it's called How Not to Be a Boy by a comedian called Webb. Might be Chris Webb. No, that's somebody else. Robert Webb, that's a fella. And there are, though it's not a book about autism, there are themes that go through that have a lot of echoes in the adult male growing up autistic, different from other people, that spin across between the two.
Thanks for the recommendations, Jules.
The next post is from Rosie Weldon's Autistic Life. A personal blog. I am an autistic adult that shares my life openly and honestly online. This continues a familiar theme. Autism isn't something that needs to be fixed. We don't want a cure. We are not a problem to solve. Autistic life is living in a world that is not being designed for us. Our struggles are around incompatibility, not defects. We need understanding. We need flexibility. What's people's thoughts on this?
I agree with everything on the post.
I like that sort of language. Some people may think it's too forthright, too brutal in many ways, but I like it personally because it says, stop trying to fix something that's not needing to be fixed. Stop being ignorant to what autism is. Stop treating autism as a problem. Stop treating us like a problem. The problem is the society, the world that we live in, is so limited and restricted, not just to autism, but to a lot of things, but in this case, especially autism. The struggles are around incompatibility because of the way that things are structured and very limiting. And you've got to have this certain or so-called certain normal mindset and existence to be able to fit not just normal, but what is basically kind of put across as the right way of being, which is a strange thing because there's no such thing like that either. And it's just like, look, understanding is needed and flexibility is needed. And I like that word flexibility because it just, even though being autistic, I like strict routines and things like that, it's always good to have flexibility as well, so that it's not as stressful, it's not as boring, and that you can change things a little bit within a certain scope that's comfortable. So that's my take on it. The post has been commented on as well by, excuse me, the post has been commented on as well by G.R. Robertson. And what he says is, as I said, an extraordinary attorney woo, our lives may seem eccentric and weird, but they have meaning and value. So that's that as well. Being eccentric and being weird, being odd, and that's how many autistic people do feel. Yep. As Robbie says, there's this thing about conversion, behavioural conversion therapies to try and fix a problem that probably doesn't even exist. It's more of a conformity thing. And that will have done a lot of damage to a lot of people, particularly, if it's done to children. But even in adulthood, things like that are so... I mean, I've had therapies, but it's never been autistic based. It's basically time management and sort of kind of behavioural therapy. It is behavioural therapy, but it's more about not thinking too far ahead and not being too, it's about managing time, basically, managing emotions to an extent, but without being invasive. Cognitive behavioural therapy it was. And of course, I've heard there's been people say there's had negative experiences of that themselves. I think it just depends on who does it. And lucky for me, it was someone who done it actually knew me already, and it was a sort of kind of comfortable relationship, which made the therapies more effective and enjoyable. But there's so many therapies out there that try to fix something that doesn't require fixing.
I think the difficulty for me, and it saddens me worldwide, is that just as we have the most progressive thinking in autism, autistic people describing themselves, understanding themselves, communicating themselves with each other, just as we have that going on, we also have a growing middle class in the world which is able to buy for their children educational advantage, tutoring, ways forward, therapies, which means that more than ever around the world, more and more autistic kids are actually being led into these retraining, training programs, improvement programs than ever before, because the population of people who are able to identify their children as neurodiverse has increased. And at the same time, the number of people who are in the middle classes of these different societies growing around the world, like when I was in India, the market is just growing so quickly. it's grown exponentially over periods of years. So there's the irony. Just as we know more and more to avoid trying to put people into categories and train them and retrain them, that's exactly the time when more and more kids are actually put into exactly those training courses.
Yeah, thinking about that. I mean, I think, well, I don't think. I recall of actually going to a few social skills sessions. I don't think they were autistic. I think one was autistic specific, but I can recall that I felt with it myself. My social skills weren't great, although I realise now they're not. It's nothing to do with being not great. It's just different. But at the time, I was like early 20s. I went to social skills, and I can't remember in great details about it. But the one that was autism specific, it was like, try to condition you in a certain way in how you hold a conversation, how to behave, how to maybe know how to dress. I think I don't think that was part of it, but basically those simple things about having a conversation and doing the sort of the fake thing, the drama thing where it's like, what you call it? Not fake. It's like mock conversations and trying to learn and how to speak and how to be and how to approach certain situations, etc. It's just kind of weird thinking about that. Now, I think it's maybe 20, well, maybe more than 20 now. And it was an autistic charity. I can't remember what it was called, but it was an autistic charity that actually ran these groups. And they were good, they weren't bad. And I met people there, and it was nice and relaxed, really. Although the actual stuff that we did was quite intense. And then thinking back now, did that do people any good? Or was that just a kind of kidology? Because it lacks understanding of what autism actually is, and that you didn't need that sort of thing. Confidence building I can understand, but this was actually social skills and how to speak and how to behave in some ways. Although not as intense as obviously kind of therapies and all that we've already talked
Harry,
about.
It really sounds as though you've answered your own question. As you've gone on further and further describing this, it's got more and more like you're describing something where they were teaching you a certain way to behave, and they were actually training you to be able to mask a neurotypical way of being. That's what they were aiming to do at that point.
Yes, school is sort of like that too.
Yeah, I get it. It's just weird because I'm talking about it while thinking about it, and then thinking back all these details coming in. But yeah, right. It's it is conditioning. But at the time, it didn't seem that way. It seemed like there was a way forward and it was progressive. But then looking back now, it's like, yeah, maybe not at all, or definitely not at all. But that's what people go through, and that's the kind of things that people. And the thing about this was actually in a hotel, in a conference suite. It was nice and comfortable and good enough, but it's just weird thinking back on it. Because what I was taught then, I don't do anyway, because it's not natural to me. So yeah, very true. Yeah, as Rob is saying, they teach you neurotypical social skills. So yeah. So I did answer one question in the end. And that's right, I just showed you how wrong it is. But then I'm going back a few years, maybe lessons have been learned by many since then, but as we know, not always. Because in many ways,
bollocks. Of course they bloody haven't, mate. Come on, don't.
oh, there'll be some. There'll be some.
You know it's a waste of shite.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be fair. Although I do agree with your approach as well. It can make you very angry. And it can be quite pathetic. Well, it can be pathetic at times. The next post is from Autistic Not Weird. Again, didn't realise I did them twice, doesn't matter. Autistic Not Weird, community page, articles and insight about autism from Chris Bonello, autistic author, advocate, speaker and former teacher. And what this post is about was about a page of doodles from a teacher during one of his training sessions. And he says, I was very glad to see the page of doodles from a teacher during yesterday's training. Why? Because it's guaranteed that they were listening. It was great to speak for Blazing Stars Education and their very neurodiverse staff team. Speaking as someone who always got a Rubik's Cube in his fingers while delivering speeches in order to aid concentration, it's encouraging to see neurodivergent audience members doodling as I talk. Because it almost certainly means they're trying to help themselves focus better on the content. What do people think about that particular post?
Well, it's just it's a nice post. I always have lots of doodles, and if I've got to take notes for something, there's always lots of drawings, and it was the same at school and at uni as well. And it was sometimes like people come in and have a look and go, what does that one mean? It could be a little bit like, I don't know. There was just some weird things happening in my head at that time.
It's making me think of something that happened this week when I attended an online discussion about substance abuse and autism and neurodivergence, and the idea of stimming as a way of being able to neutralize your need for some intervention, as a coping strategy for some distress, say, or misalignment. And so when you see doodling or any kind of, say, stimming process as a means of enabling you to be in the moment, and as it says, they're listening, because we were brought up to think that you had to pay attention, like be seen to be paying attention, this rapt attention where faces were like, yeah, I'm looking, I'm listening and all that. But that's very uncomfortable. And maybe that's just me, but I think generally it's an uncomfortable position. So everyone should be able to find a way to tune in to their being in a certain sense. I'm going off on one.
Join the club, Raymond.
Yeah, happy to go off on one with you, Harry.
Oh yes, I prefer Jules, but he just say which is what I'm saying. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just like Jules' approach.
What, you take the high road and I'll take the low road?
No,
yeah, he's expecting me to have some kind of outspoken thing. He's doing that thing that Grundy did with the Sex Pistols. He's trying to taunt the bear to say, "Go on then, be outrageous." That's what he's doing, Raymond. We shouldn't let him do this.
No, cool.
Is that a crescendo point in the episode where we get you to swear, Jules?
Yeah, and I can put my foot through the TV screen and it get in the front.
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
paper.
kick all the drums teetering down the set.
Yeah, cash out of chaos.
I suppose it generally gets to this time in Harry's program where at some point I've gone off on one about something, isn't it? You know, it's that stage of the program.
That's what it's all about, I feel.
I think I get slightly tempted at this point to sort of expand on certain things, because if I take them at face value, there's not much traction. And so really I should just ignore them and just listen to what others have to say. But sometimes this urge takes over to, work it, work with it, jam, and get a tune out of it.
Yeah,
You're
you're
allowed
right
to
to do
speak.
that, Raymond.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
you
right.
really are right to do that. Yeah, and yeah, I really take what you're saying there, because in a lot of ways we are working with the same bones of the same material, aren't we? It's our autistic experience against the background of the rest of the fucking world. And so
Well,
you're right,
what,
Roman.
yeah, that's where
we
the
have to find.
creativity is.
Yeah, spot on. Is it finding different angles to say the same thing and get it in some way to stick, you know? Like finding the right knife angle to put in somebody's fucking torso so that it sticks there, so it makes a contact with their brain in some way.
I think you may have lost me there. But yeah, there's certain artists I've seen who would take that approach. Yeah, get a bit more visceral, a wee bit more controversial, a wee bit more edgy, and expand the possibilities. This is what it's all about.
I support what you're saying there. If that's something you're coming from, I support that. I think that's what we should do more of.
Well, I call it the subjunctive mode. I usually resist giving things terms because, it sounds a bit pompous, but it's the only phrase I've found for it, the subjunctive mode, where everything becomes as if or possible, rather than, the indicative actual, that's what that is. I'm more interested in what that could possibly be.
And that's linking back to old Chummy and his Socratic principle, isn't it? If we spent more time talking with him and aiming things much more in that direction, would that make a good step in the right way you would direct things?
I would support that totally. I've been, thinking about that because I look him up online and stuff, and it was a buzz. It was a groove talking to him, and it would be great if it could happen again, because you get a wee bit sad sometimes thinking, there was possibilities there, and now it's just sort of gone, and you think maybe it's maybe working with that. He's a busy guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's really up for it though. There's a few people that we've connected with recently that are really that really seems as though that's where we should be going. They're the directions we should be going in. It's a bit about what I was talking with the 4x4 about, what I should be saying at this conference and where the aim is. I'm getting a sense more from the group that we're aiming over in that direction.
Yeah, spread your little tendrils out now. Yeah, you're feeling it now. Yeah. Form the big band.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, Raymond. I think if you're going to be into this for a while, that would be really cool. There seem to be a group of us now with different little hooks on this that are a bit of a tied up knot in the middle to be strong enough for it all to be working for us in our own different ways, even if we're all working in other directions and other things. There's a knot in the middle that suits a lot of people at the moment, with lots of different interesting ideas. So it's very ideas bubbling and coffee shop talk, and there's a lot going on that's inspirational with the different conversations going on in the group we've got at the moment.
Yeah, it's the hub idea, when you're talking about the space that we've opened up, like an affordance space. It affords, a safe space of trust and stuff and exploration. So, yeah, as long as there's biscuits.
I'll tell you the thing that strikes me is I feel as though there's everybody who takes part in this, in all the different ways that they do take part in it, feel as if they are teaching me something. They're teaching me something different about the way of expressing things. That is the nub of this for me, that every single person who takes part teaches me something different.
Yeah, that's very open, eh? Everybody's doing their own thing, and yet they can all be connected.
So if I'm talking with a group now in the middle of Harry's program here about the direction that we've been talking about pushing in, does that kind of make sense to the people who are here at the moment?
Yeah, fine with me. Progressive, helping each other.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a real springtime vibe, isn't it? It's like the shoots are coming up.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, because we are a smallish group, and if we can find a way of saying something out loud, does it look like this? Is this a vague? Is this the right direction? And people mostly want us to go in that direction. Then that's a good kind of democratic pull in the right way. So the more it fits the more of us, the better chance it is of it continue on in a core way, that not in the middle way.
The next post is from Effie Purple Bean. Say that again. The next post is from Effie Purple Bean, Autistic Artist, who's a globally successful professional illustrator and ADHD artist creating helpful comics with original characters while recovering from huge brain surgery. I paint with my non-dominant hand and have aphasia. We'll create original mixed media artwork for you. And what they've shared is a milestone. 1 year since I completed Beanie Wonderland sold. My most complex painting so far. Although I now have a new commission and hope to beat that record, including pencil outline, purchasing new materials needed and planning, this painting probably took over 50 hours. Can't be sure though. I spent a lot of time happy in my art nook on my poor EDS knees with AGR songs blasting in my cochlear implant via Bluetooth. It was a happy, more innocent time of my life before my most recent brain surgery gave me aphasia and made life more scary. I'm glad I had those innocent times of singing along to one of my fave bands and creating the best painting I could create at the time. I'm glad I had those innocent, happy times. Life was about to get a lot harder. Now, I'm struggling a lot since my most recent brain surgery, a left frontal craniotomy, a few months ago. These struggles haven't stopped me from creating 4 commissions for dear friends since I came out of hospital. One of those new commissions was a Beanie Wonderland Enchantress. I have new paintings now, thanks to so many generous gifts. Thank you. With love. I thought there was no outdoing this one, but I know I will soon create my I thought there was no outdoing this one, but I know I will soon create my next most complex painting yet. I'm having a lot of fun planning for my next commission. Maybe it will be an angelic huntress. All the Beanie Wonderland love and light from your resident blue phoenix. What's other people's thoughts on this? I kind of like posts like these, especially when people have been through really tough times and showing off their skills.
Yeah, if we reflect back on an earlier post about, autistic people don't have emotions, and we said they just have difficulty expressing emotions. It's like, well, how does this one feel? There's a lot to absorb here. Me, initially, I'm thinking beautiful, and then I'm a wee bit sad hearing about what she's been through. And how sometimes we can struggle to take on board other people's suffering, but it's a fact of life. But yeah, just look at that stuff. Look at those ideas. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I'm really impressed that she's done this with their non-dominant hand. There's a lot of precision and a lot of technical skill there. So yeah, kudos. And it's a nice composition. There's quite a lot of flow to it. It's a busy picture, but I like how your eyes moved around it.
Yeah, those spirals. You're involved with art, Nicola, aren't you? I mean, yeah.
I dabble.
You dabble.
I think I just do like the style. Every artist has their own style. They have their own palette, and there's something very uplifting about some of the compositions there from my visual cortex. What they do to the back of my eyes. It's it's a positive. It's a really positive expression. Somebody right in the middle of there, they're saying they've had this big thing, this big brain thing. They've had to be broken open, a bit of them taken out, sucked down, thrown away, and then now they are fulfilling those commissions. So the survival, the joy, the coming back, I have got through this, the vibrancy, the springlightness of the whole thing. It's very touching.
There's a big connection with a theme that I think we touch on quite a lot here too. I see the Alice in Wonderland theme, and just this morning somebody had shared with me it was an excerpt from Alice in Wonderland where the White Rabbit's saying to her you're wondering if I love you or something, and no, I don't love you at all. I decided not to. And it's this whole lecture he gives her about how she has to learn to love herself first and have that little buffer of self-love around her before she goes off into the world, beseeching others to love her. And there's something in there was just something connected to kind of overcoming codependency that I think we talk about here, and sort of our self-regard.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying there, Nicola. Codependency, maybe. Agency. Yeah, this idea of like the dependency on the world or the outside to confirm us, value. Am I on the right line here?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I think that I feel earlier we were kind of talking about worrying about the world not seeing us as autistic people as valuable, and I feel like that's kind of an angle that we look at sometimes. And then it's like, I feel like this can be a bit of a counterweight. Well, do we need to feel valued by other people before we can value ourselves? And does the act of like really valuing and esteeming and focusing on the kind of arty kind of creativity, all this lovely stuff we're talking about, the emergent qualities that of our interactions with each other and the appreciation of all that dynamism, it just seems like that's the stuff of life. That's what it's for, rather than, I think Harry put it really succinctly earlier as well when he was kind of saying, well, there's no money in the world ending, yeah, we're gonna need to keep this show going. Well, he didn't say it like that, but I paraphrase.
Yeah, to feel value in the engagement itself, rather than an expectation of some kind of justification or reward, and how we're often brought up to be, it's kind of inspiring and freeing when we get exposed to that engagement, that emergence that you're talking about, if I'm following you correctly.
It's a positive feedback loop, isn't it? It's a positive feedback reward exchange. And throwing this word codependency in there is such a bomb there, Nicola. It's so it's a gigantic concept, because codependency is one of those words that's used about, functional alcoholics or codependent violent relationships, where people are dysfunctional in such ways that they somehow fit with each other. It's got this whole set of different concepts that goes with it, codependency. Certainly when you take it down to the couple level, but using it in the way you're using it and expanding it out and making it to be that codependency of us as a group or us as a community or people who share neurodivergent ways of thinking, in any way codependency there. What the codependent concept is about is that people create a reality that they all agree to within it, and that reality itself becomes codependent. But if you also look at every other thing that's human, the reality that you construct, whether it be the validity of a court or the existence of a business or what a school is or any social structure, they are all a codependency of belief that these things are what they are anyway. So if you take it out further, that's exactly what human beings do. So then, if you're taking it into an idea of saying it's about autistic codependence, you're saying that autism in its own sense has a sense about itself that means that it's close enough to as a relational group to create a codependence that creates a reality that's positive for its own self and also self-references in a positive way. And that is a huge thing. That is describing an identity as separate from everyone else and making it a positive identity.
Yeah, I do, and I do think it's about that if we like are victimized, there it can be powerful to see ourselves. It can be powerful to see ourselves as like creators or co-creators of life, of like the whatever we are all in, rather than assume the victim stance, but to kind of like recognize that there's a victim sort of perpetrator rescuer like dynamic that you can study. Like it's a theory, like the drama triangle, and the way out of the drama triangle is onto it's like creative triangle. So you shift from being a victim to being a creator. And the perpetrator looked at as a challenger. So there's a challenge ahead of you. You're the kind of on your hero's journey. What are you going to do? And instead of looking for somebody to rescue, you look for a coach. Like you've got this coach role, which is like more empowering. And so that's when you're kind of like engaging with, say, CBT tools, or different therapy tools, or an occupational therapist to go, I want to be able to have a shower every 2 days, but something's happening, and you figure out it's your sensory needs, or you figure out if you make like yourself a schedule for the day, a visual schedule, you're like, oh, I work better. So it's kind of it's a shift in how you look at things, but it can be incredibly there can be a credible amount of energy can be freed in that way.
Yeah, a wee bit like narrative therapy, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, I suppose narrative therapy is talking to yourself, giving yourself a narrative of something to follow, the positive belief system. But this is a bit more than that, isn't it? It's actually manifesting that. It's deciding on the reality and then creating it together as a group to create a reality that then is real because enough people have agreed it's real.
Which is why our own experiences and our own like perspectives like hold so much value, because like like it's when we kind of get to this one big powerful narrative, so much gets erased as well. We need the details, we need all the like the book that we were talking about earlier, that's kind of a joyous way to share perspective. Like I'm sure all of us have watched a film and been like moved by it as well, like a piece of art, hearing a conversation. I think we can speak from our own experience and not batter each other with our opinions, and actually still create like change, but not with a humility that we have only but one perspective each.
It's a cooperative endeavor. It's sharing. It's you can do all the dancing around, recognizing difference, all that kind of thing that you have to dance around. But at the end of the day, it's just sharing and then giving people enough space to be able to share fully so that they get it out, so it feels authentic to them. And that's pretty much it. As long as it's layers of sharing over layers of sharing, that's what we need.
Yeah, and I've always found the result to be so much better than whatever's going on in my imagination, or whatever like little pattern is maybe looped around from the past. It's like, be present, like let it, be open, have to the different perspective. And it's, to have safe enough places to be able to go and do that is like a wonderful, wonderful thing.
that's a direction I think we're moving towards more. That I think that's what I'm determining.
The next post is from Little Puddins, which is an education website from Amanda McGuinness, who is an autism and visual support specialist based in Ireland. And what they've shared is about the importance of the AAC representation in media and education. And I'll just go into what AAC means, etc., as we've discussed it before. The importance of AAC representation in media and education and why it matters. The augmentative and alternative communication is what AAC stands for. And it's a vital means of communications for many children and teenagers. For these individuals, seeing AAC depicted in books, television shows, films, and educational materials is more than just representation. It's validation. Representation in media helps shape societal attitudes, promotes self-acceptance, and fosters a more inclusive world. What's people's thoughts on that?
Was it on the Chris Packham documentary where there was someone who was able to use like their AAC to express like an incredible, like detailed, rich, like world that they had no ability to get across otherwise. But yeah, that's what came into my mind when you read that out, and just like it's sometimes so hard to get the words out of your head. And I was thinking of like the artist that we were speaking about before who had aphasia from the operation too, and then I think the more locked in you get, the harder it must be.
In a way, it's kind of like learning the language, isn't it? You you can have this. I remember reading about a guy who wasn't able to speak until he was about 15. Yet he was absorbing everything and working stuff out. And then once he developed some form of ability or capability or language to communicate with others, communicate with the spoken language world, it turns out he's extremely proficient and creative. So that's my little resonance within there.
Yeah, in the Chris Packham documentary, it was a young man called Murray Bruce, son of Ken Bruce, who is a BBC radio DJ, I think, or certainly was at the time of the documentary. And what Murray's kind of story said, and what he said himself through his communication device, is just because you don't speak vocally, it doesn't mean you have nothing to say. And the misinterpretation of capability and culpability because you don't speak at all. And because even if you use this device, you're still looked upon as, disabled or looked upon as inferior being by very ignorant people. But basically what it is just communicating differently. And it's something that society, and even within myself, needs to learn that sort of language and that sort of approach. And it's something Autistic Radio is keen to learn as well. We've talked about it so many times before. People communicate differently. and people have got a lot of things to say through that, and they've got a voice through that that's been previously either ignored or they just didn't have anything to be able to give that voice, you know, a sort of an avenue, a platform, a pathway. And I just found that Murray was, of course, it's only just one particular story, one particular person. It's like, it's just an example of how much more communication is vast than just speaking in terms of speaking voice. I just found that very interesting within itself and how it should be more respected. Well, I certainly try to do as well, as if obviously if it comes up, because it's not always easy to find. It just depends on the flow of who shares what. Is share different people that communicate in these different ways on our page, which gives a chance to discuss, or even an opportunity to discuss with them, you know, their experiences and their, you know, their life experiences and their thoughts, their views, and their perspectives on life in general and in autism. And it's something I always look to share because it's what I like about it. It's different, and it's not just different, it's like alternative in terms of it shows that life isn't limiting. It just shows you there's so much out there that sometimes we're just not being bad, but just being ignorant of, because we're used to doing things the way that we're used to doing or being taught to do by the society we live in.
I think the impression I get is that the alternative communication community is a vibrant community. You know, they have this communication method in common, using it via the internet, so that they have their own world, probably better network than most other autistic people, because that's what they have and that's what they're into. So in some ways, we are slightly outside that, and if those people have a common interest with us, that's where we're more likely to get an interface. At the moment, our output and things, there doesn't seem to be that much of a common interface with people who, you know, you've only got so much time in the day to be interacting with other people. So I'm assuming that most people who are using ASE are interacting with other people using ASE almost all the time.
Are you seeing that on a technical level, Jules?
Well, there are AAC spaces, aren't they? I think if you are somebody if that is your primary way of communicating, you're also going to have quite a different experience of your autistic life to somebody who is adapted in a certain way by being able to mask, use speech, and pass, and all those other kind of difficult terms. AAC, or using an alternative method, really puts you into a position where the majority of the time you're unlikely to be working outside the home. There's a lot of assumption of your dependency. So as a group, as part of the group, I probably don't have as much in common with the AAC group as other members of this at the moment. And I think they would feel the same back at me, that their struggles are different to my struggles, kind of thing. But there is always an overlap. There's an overlap between all of our experiences in this. So just keeping open to anybody who are trying to make it an easy entry to join with us. I think it would be possible for people who are using a alternative communication to join in with us at the moment.
So there's no way we can really communicate. It's just it resonates with me slightly because I'm kind of in my own head. Of course, I use learned language, but I also play with defamiliarization. It's something I got from music, which like I can change the tuning of a guitar, and I'm in a different type of expression, and so it becomes embodied, or what's the word, somatic at that point. It's kind of like a somatic form of expression and communication of how you feel in your body, and you use tones and rhythms. And I sometimes try to apply that to thought. Now, where that then goes with shared language is another matter, and whether it can connect with this group is another thing too. So I just thought I'd put that in there. That's my personal resonance.
I was in a situation recently where I was communicating with two people who didn't use voice. The guy in the hotel when I was in Kanapur, he was the guy who looked after a floor of the hotel, and I was on his floor. He was somebody who didn't have a voice. When he gesticulated, he would make some noise, but it was more like breathing. There was no obvious sign of any physical injury to the fellow, and he said that he couldn't hear, or he signed that he couldn't hear, and he also agreed that he had been given the word autistic, and he's when he recognized that word when I was translating it on a Google phone, he lit up. He was kind of like, yeah, that's exactly it, kind of thing. Now, we didn't have a language in common, and we had what you described as basic gesture. And the people around him had a language in common with him, but they didn't really use written language as much. But he did understand reading and writing. He could write in script and his finger on the screen, and that could be translated into text. So that was his alternative communication. It was some kind of app on his phone. But they didn't use that with him. They didn't use his alternative communication. They basically made up their own sign language over a period of time, his friend and his colleagues at work. And he was in a lowly position, but he was treated well, and he was part of the team, and nobody seemed to be being fierce about him. But there was definitely a kinship. There was definitely a obvious kinship. And when he had noticed me looking and photographing the different architectural features of the hotel, he came up immediately with a load of facts about how the hotel was built in such a year and such, and its original style and things. So there was definitely an interest, there was a tuning of brains in some way, that we were both autistic, we were both into the details of vision and around. And he was very pleased to have somebody to communicate with that had also said that they were autistic. That's my most recent dealing. Well, there isn't. There's another one in Vasco da Gama where the guy wasn't being treated very well. And he had come all the way from Tibet, and he said he had a relationship with the word, and he was ADHD and autistic, and he was jumping from foot to foot as a person working in this cafe, and he'd come all this way from Tibet, and he was basically sleeping in the place and just being fed there. He wasn't really working for money. He was working just for roof over his head and board, and he was being barked at a lot, and so it wasn't possible for him to in any way relax from morning to. He was totally in a bad place, and that was because he wasn't speaking, and he said he was deaf or didn't have hearing, He also used the full English, no, the full language, not Marathi, but the language from where he lived. So it's a real change in experience of your life if you don't have language at all and you're autistic.
Well, thanks, Jules, for that. We've come to the end of the broadcast. Great discussion as always. A good mixture of topics as well. Although, as on all our broadcasts, there seems to be a theme. It just naturally comes as things are shared over the week, and especially over the days leading up to the Sunday broadcast. So thank you again. And many thanks to the people out there that share those posts, that give us the opportunity to share all these conversations about different topics. So this is Harry's Facebook for the 2nd of March 2025, which is part of the 555 Spectrum Voices conversation on Autistic Radio every Sunday. And I look forward to doing it again next week. But thanks once again for everybody being involved and taking part, making this happen. And good night, and I'll hand over to Jules.
Thank you, Harry. That was quite a show, and I apologise if I took up quite a lot of the edit at the end there with my storytelling. This is the part of the show where I quickly go through some of the things that we're doing here on Autistic Radio and the workings of the charity Autistic Association. I haven't been very well this week.